Hello, everyone. On this episode, we talk with my Aunt Shelly about the loss of her son, Jared, when he was about 4 months old to SIDS, which stands for Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. It takes roughly about 2,500 infants a year, and losing a child, I can't even imagine. Having my own. So it was a great, powerful conversation to hear how her and the family got through it. And having her other kids, how that helped her cope, kind of. She also brings up the Safe to Sleep campaign multiple times, and that's just a campaign to help people know the signs, maybe the symptoms, how to reduce the risk of SIDS. So without giving away too much, here we go. All right, good evening, everybody. I'm here with my wonderful Aunt Shelly and my beautiful wife, Leah. So how are you doing tonight, Shelly?
I'm doing great.
Yes?
Yes. So
Leah?
happy to be here.
Yeah? Welcome. Glad you gave me the time. Leah, how are you?
I'm grand.
Okay. Leah's just going to hang out, I think. We don't have Uke with us tonight. Hopefully he shows up in the middle of it, but we'll find out. Anyway, so Shelly, I got to call you out, like I said. Tell us about your little story tonight.
Oh, it was a dandy. I work in a retail store, furniture store, and there's just two of us girls in there. And never has this happened before, but we were leaving the store and we shut off all the lights and locked all the doors. And then we went out and we actually locked somebody, a customer in the store, and we left.
That's crazy. So, I mean, you didn't even really know that someone was in there.
We felt so bad, but we were laughing so hard. It was hysterical. And then they actually called the sheriff, and the sheriff called the owner, and the owner was, she was serious, but then she was laughing too. It's like, how does this happen?
It happens.
Yeah. So we just kind of had to joke about it, and the guy was joking about it. So it was like, yeah, it was.
That's pretty funny. At least he didn't throw a fit and say, I'm going to sue you guys and all that stuff. Seems like people do that more often these days.
Yeah.
So hopefully he takes it as a joke.
Fine,
yeah.
But it was just unusual for something like that to happen. Like, oh well.
Yeah. Well, at least everybody laughed about it. So
yeah.
So I kind of explained to you what fire through fog was. It's just being that fire through a foggy time in your life. And the goal for our, I guess you want to call it brand group, is just build a network for people to come together who's struggling with just tough times. I mean, we had Jacob Stolley on last week talking about how he got hit by a car. Not take anything away from it, but he walked away from it, not physically at that time, but walked away with some minor injuries.
Right.
But there could be someone out there that's suffering with something like that because they don't have a support system or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So it was cool and that's the biggest thing is his lesson he gave to us was you got to suffer in life to change and mature and get through tough times. So, I mean, let's just get right to it and just have you explain why you're here with us if you would like to. It would be great to hear the story. I know what happened and the whole family knows, but I want to learn more about it and see how you got through it.
Yeah, this is really awesome for me because I've always wanted to do, something like this to help parents out, to know that, to let them know that somebody's out there to support them when this type of thing happens. But I actually I have 5 children, but I've actually had 6. So my second child, Jared, was 4 months old, and he passed away of SIDS. Which, if you don't know what SIDS is, it's Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. They don't know a whole lot of why it's actually happens. They are now thinking that it has something to do with mostly like the brain stem and not being fully developed. And this majority of deaths happen between 2 and 4 months. Well, Jared was 4 months. I had gone back to work after having him. It was my first day back to work in a bank, and I dropped him off at the babysitter along with Alec, my then 2-year-old, and dropped him off. And I was very avid about when Alec was born to not lay him on his stomach. I knew about SIDS, heard about it, and I was just very avid about telling everybody who kept them that please do not put them on their stomachs to sleep at all. Well, then I took Jared to the babysitter, and she had put Jared down for a nap on a sleeping bag, and 10 minutes later, it was on his stomach. 10 minutes later, she had decided that she just washed that sleeping bag, so she better go take it because she knew Jared would spit up. So when she went in there, he was not breathing. He was blue. So she had to do CPR on him, and obviously she called the ambulance. And then my first day back to work, I was there 45 minutes, and I was up in the HR office at the bank. And if you're no saline or whatever, the bank was actually right next door to the fire department. So we both were sitting there, and we heard squads go out, and I just remember saying, man, I hate it when I hear ambulances, Well, lo and behold, that ambulance was for my son. And so you just never, I'll never forget that, because that's it. Everything that happens that day, that something tragic like that happens, you don't forget every single detail. You never forget the details. And so then the cops came to the bank, picked me up, drove me to the hospital, and then they had pronounced Jared dead of SIDS. They always do an autopsy because they don't necessarily know why, that infant may have died. They can assume it's SIDS, but they definitely do autopsies to make sure that that's exactly what it was. So that's my story. And then by the grace of God, I have tons of family, tons of, a support system, friends. I had people just coming out of the woodwork for me and my family and my husband. And so we have a huge supportive family and friends, which got us, through it. But still, as much support as you have, you still have to get through it yourself.
Sure.
Emotionally, on your end. There's nobody that can do that for you. So
yeah, there's definitely. I mean, I'm a firm believer that you can't do life without people, but there's only so much that they can do, because you're your own person. You only know exactly how you're feeling or what you're going through. So they can only say so much, and you get that, like, this happens for a reason. This is what you'll be fine. We'll get through this. They can say that so much, but the battles that you're fighting inside are so much stronger than that. So constant reassurance, and there's a point where you have to go inside yourself and find that will to get through this yourself, because if you just bury yourself, it could be worse. So my misunderstanding my whole life basically with this story is that I thought and I've told people, I'm like, don't lay baggy pillows or blankets in a bed, because I thought SIDS, they suffocated. Basically, they could suffocate with that. Is that kind of correlated with that? Do you know from what?
Well, so what happens is if there's something that's not fully developed with their brainstem, or from what they're saying, it's called, and they call this now like a safe to sleep campaign, is how you should be placing the baby and all of that. So if the baby is on its stomach, and if that's something in that nerve is not like fully developed, and have their face down, some of them don't actually move their heads. Like we would normally, if we're laying face down and we can't breathe right, we turn our heads. But most babies know that they can turn their heads. But if for some reason, if there is something wrong in that stem or whatever, that child might not know to turn its head. And so basically they are, breathing in their own carbon monoxide. And
That's
so
crazy.
that's what actually, does them in basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they say, the wrong, I'm not making my babysitter wrong.
Yeah.
I never blamed her
That was
in
going to be
any
one of my
way.
next questions
I
is,
never blamed her. I
Mhm.
wanted to at first, but I didn't
Yeah.
because I was actually blaming myself at first because I did not tell her to not lay him on his belly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very avid about that. And I didn't tell her that.
Mm-hmm.
So I did blame myself for a very long time.
Yeah, that was another one. Like,
But
so yeah, about how long?
yeah, but the fact that she laid him on his sleeping bag and there's those pockets,
Yeah.
the fluffiness of the pockets. And even if he had his face in that pocket, he still was breathing his own carbon monoxide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what did it. But
So do you talk to that same person that babysat him that day?
I don't ever talk to her. I don't see her. She's much, much older lady now.
Okay.
So, but
Okay.
I never.
How was she after it all?
Very distraught. I mean, obviously she quit babysitting
Really?
soon after that. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd have to be
She
hard.
was very distraught about
Mhm.
it.
She probably was blaming herself a lot too.
Oh, I'm sure she did, but yeah, she did. She did CPR. She did everything that she could before the ambulance got there.
Yeah.
But it's very, very important that people know that it's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's inside, of the child that maybe something's not developed. And sometimes they have the respiratory type issues or something that you don't know about. Well, the one thing the day before I took Jared to the babysitter, I actually remember him sitting in his bouncer's seat, and I remember hearing him breathe, and I'm like, he just sounds like he's breathing funny. So that could have very well had something to do with him, that happening to him.
And I mean, you have other children.
Mm-hmm.
Connor, to be specific, has asthma, so
Yeah.
it could have been something that just ran in the family. And something, I mean, I guess you could say leaving pillows and fluffy blankets out of the bed could definitely help and prevent that. But if it's just something that's how they're wired, I didn't know that. I thought it was
It can be that, but you should, and this is why they call it Safe to Sleep. The Safe to Sleep campaign is they give you, these things that you should not do with a baby. You should not put any blankets in the bed with them unless it's a thin blanket, something like that, no comforters, no stuffed animals, nothing that's going to keep them from, breathing, or they wrap themselves up in it, something like that. And you should always make sure that they are on their back. If you basically, until that baby can roll over, if you're placing that baby on its back from the day it's born, that's what it's going to know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Tummy time.
your baby, basically you're training that child to stay on its back for as long as possible until it starts rolling over.
Yeah.
And then you have no control really. But you do have control of what you put in that crib.
Yeah, for sure.
And so just by, placing the baby on its back, I mean, I literally cringe to this day every time I see a child that's like asleep and its head's tucked in its mom's shoulder, or, they just have the baby's head facing towards them, towards their clothes. And it's like,
You don't know if that baby's going to know to
I
turn
don't,
its head or
that
not.
baby's asleep. That baby may not turn its head enough.
And that's crazy. Like, if this never happened to you, do you think you'd ever even have that subconscious feeling, basically, like seeing that?
No, probably not.
Yeah.
It's just,
That's
I
crazy.
always thought that, because I've never looked into it, because I've never really had a reason,
Right.
until now, that SIDS was honestly, I don't want to belittle the situation,
Oh,
but
no.
just an excuse for suffocation. Like, I honestly thought that, because I knew that there was a blanket involved in Jared's. So it's good.
Yeah,
to
I
hear
didn't
that.
know that whole story.
Yeah. And there doesn't have to be a blanket involved, and it's like, but it could be anything,
Mhm.
It's just that he didn't
and
have that
you're not
reflex.
supposed to, people overdress their babies too. If it's cold,
Mhm.
they overdress them. Like, you think you want to keep them so warm, but they can also, by learning, I've learned new things from this. You can overheat that child, which actually hurts their breathing. And so it can cause the same thing. So they're just as cold or as warm as you are. They have the same body temperature.
Yeah.
So, you're stuffing them in these car seats and you're stuffing them in their baby carriers when you're in the stores, and then you got them all wrapped up in these bundles. And it's like, don't overheat your child.
That's a great point.
They have the same, of course you want them to be warm, but
But
don't
if you're
want
wearing
to
a t-shirt, they don't need to be wearing a big thick jacket.
They don't need to be overheated and overdressed just because it's winter out.
Yeah.
And then also I suggest, like, these women who carry these, what do you call those harness things?
The slings.
A sling, and they have the baby tucked down in there and you can't even see the child. Oh, that makes me crazy. It makes me crazy.
Do you ever say anything, or do you?
I don't, because I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm so aware of it. Like, no way would I put my baby in one of those slings. There's just no way. How do you know how that baby's, that baby's asleep, but how do you know it's breathing or how it's breathing? And it's crunched up. Okay, so its neck's crunched up.
Yeah.
So are you restricting its breathing? It's just not. It's not a safe thing to do. There are so many other ways to carry your child that it's just not safe.
Yeah. And you would love to say something, but it's probably, in your mind, it'd probably be tiring just to explain that story over and over of why it could happen.
Right.
From your experience. So that's powerful stuff. So do you think, I don't know how to word this question, this happened for a reason, or do you think you needed this experience? I mean, as bad as that sounds, like, do you think it's something that you had to experience in your life to open your eyes to anything? It's so, like I said with Jacob about getting hit by a car, and he survived and everything, and it was a little suffering for him, but it's hard to word this question with the situation. Like, you legit lost somebody, like your child. I can't even imagine losing one of mine.
Yeah.
So
it's literally the worst thing that could ever happen to a parent. Like, the worst thing.
Oh yeah.
It's just horrific. And you don't want to, like, I could never say, like, oh, that's the best, that's something I learned from. I mean, I think you do learn from it, but it's so horrifying and it's so overwhelming, and it just, it literally takes your breath away. You don't even know how to function.
Yeah.
I
mean, I imagine. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, in my brain, how I make things seem not okay, but better. Things happen to prevent maybe something worse down the road. Like, maybe he was going to have a lot of trouble with his airways as he got older. And I don't know if it would be harder or easier losing a child at any age, earlier or later.
Not even any
but
age,
maybe just for his own sake, that him not suffering if he were going to have
I am a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And I think, I know that I'm a good mom, but I think it made me a better mom for my children, and I'm so busy. I was so busy with my other kids that I don't even think I explained the whole story of how that happened to Jared.
They don't know to this day?
Well, they do know. I think they do know, but I'm just like, did I really sit down and tell them exactly what happened? And I feel horrible. Like, they don't really know the whole story about their brother.
Well, sure
but it's like you're so consumed. Like, I seriously had 4 other kids at home. So I am trying to keep up with them and trying to keep my sanity from losing my emotional, with.
Do you think that helped having the other kids?
I don't know what I would have done if I did.
Because if you were just lost in that one situation and had nothing else to do, and that's what I was about to ask, how long did it take to, are you even still recovered 100% from it?
You're recovered. I can say you're recovered, but you never forget, and you never forget that child, and you still have your days. I mean, I still 27 years later, I'll just be thinking about him and just cry.
Yeah.
Because it's your child. It's like, I want to know what he looks like, I want to see who he looks like,
Yeah, that's cool.
And I've even thought about trying to find an artist who actually does, you know, how they do where they're babies and they kind of scale it up to see how old they are.
Yeah.
I seriously lately have been thinking, man, I wish I could find somebody who could do that for me.
That's awesome.
So I could see who he looks like. Does he look like Alec? Does he look like the Hermans? Does he look like the Jones side?
Yeah.
You know, but
that would be cool.
Yeah. I mean, I actually would love to be able to find somebody to do that for me and just to see what Jared looks like.
I'll start looking. I'll ask around.
Isn't that a crazy thing? I mean, but that's the type of things you think about when you lose a child, especially as a baby. Oh, I don't get to see him get married. I don't know, you know,
and
really.
I mean, we all know where we believe and everything in our faith, and he's up there and we'll all be together again and with no suffering and whatnot. So that's the coolest thing to think about.
Yeah.
And I was going to mention, like, I think the one thing for me is I got a friend, Jared, that ever since I met him and knew he was Jared, is like, I don't know, there's just something special. And it's like, we'll always know Jared.
Mm-hmm.
And it's having this friend now, it's been extra special for me. I don't know. I don't really talk. I don't say that to anybody because it's just like, I have that special thing and I don't even really know Jared.
Right.
I mean, we came in the family late. So it's like, I mean, it's just kind of cool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for the delay. We got Uke with us now back. He showed up, so we're here. We're all here. So we left off kind of explaining, got him caught up on the situation. And I think yes, I was going to say, this was on your first day returning back from having him. This was returning back to work on our first day. Dropped him off at the babysitter, and he would go ahead.
Put down for a nap on a sleeping bag on his belly. And so basically he just inhaled his own carbon monoxide from the pockets in the sleeping bag. And so.
Okay. And we were asking about how long your recovery is and everything, and how she had 4 other kids to be taken care of at the time. And I asked her if that helped at all. And she said definitely, because she don't know what she could have done just in that moment with just that situation, dealing with that alone. Having those other kids definitely helped the recovery process. She said she'll never forget. No one's ever forgotten. And I was talking about how I have a friend named Jared, and it's kind of just always been there with me. And his name's Jared, and I didn't even really know Jared, so I feel like that could be my own little piece of him with me. So, I don't know, where were we at?
About the kids.
Okay.
So Alec was 2 when this happened, and so if I wouldn't have had him, I don't know how I would have made it through, because I was focused on him.
Yeah.
And
how did he take it? Did he realize?
Well, so I didn't know how to handle that, so we talked to the priest, and he was like, what do we do? Because he's 2. How do we explain that his brother's not here? And he's like, well, you just need to let him realize that Jared's not here, and let him notice, and then you can talk to him about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another horrifying day of my life, because Alec just crawled up in Jared's crib and asked where Jared was and asked where the baby was. So that was very, very hard day. Even though the 2-year-old really doesn't understand all that. Yeah. And Alec, pretty much as a 2-year-old, they're in their own little world.
And today, does he really remember anything?
He remembers he does remember little bits, but he doesn't remember. He doesn't. And we never took him to the funeral.
He remembers even that far back.
Yeah, he said he just remembers little bits, but he doesn't remember much at all.
Yeah.
But he was the only one that was surviving child when Jared passed. So, and some really crazy things happen when you have a child pass and then you have another child after that, because Connor was the one after that. And I'm telling you, some really crazy things happened, because Connor, when he could talk, he was over at his grandparents' house and he picked up this phone, those dial phones that we had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he just picked it up and he said, "Grandma, it's Jared." And she's like, she said, that was just Jared coming through saying, "I'm okay."
Yeah.
And I had little things like that happen throughout those years when the kids were little. And it's really weird, because my kids are close to Jared and they don't even know him. Like they've never been around him. But they all seem very close to him.
That's amazing. So other people who experience these types of events, this type of event specifically, do you think, what could you say to them to open their eyes and let them know that there's a way through? So, for instance, someone who this is their first child, that wasn't your case, but anything from you could definitely help them.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is you have to give yourself time. You can't be hard on yourself. It is not your fault. It is not hereditary. People think, okay, this could be a hereditary thing. It is not a hereditary thing. It's just something that happens to that particular child, if something's not developed right. So you have to give yourself time, and if you need counseling, get counseling.
Did you get counseling?
I did not get counseling. I think my children were my counseling. I seriously do. I think raising my kids was my counseling. I can't really speak for my husband. I don't feel like he really handled it.
That's what
emotionally. I don't think he really dealt with it.
That was going to be my next question.
It's harder for a guy, I think, but I don't think he emotionally dealt with it, and it unfortunately can break up marriages because you don't know how to deal with those emotions. So my advice is that if you're a married couple and this happens, no matter how your child had passed, you need counseling as a couple, because it's so hard. And it's not like you're blaming each other. It's just that you don't know how to process those emotions with something so traumatic.
Yeah.
But my doctor, I actually went to the doctor because I was very depressed about it. And he told me I had to give myself at least a year to mourn. And it was weird because after a year, I actually gradually started feeling more normal, more myself. But he was dead on right. He's like, you have to give yourself, and you cannot blame yourself, and you cannot be hard on yourself. If you have to break down, and don't be hard on yourself about it.
And talk to people, probably.
And talk to people.
Just
have
don't
your
hold
family,
it in.
your friends, whoever you can. Have that one person, and you only need that one person that can help you and support you.
So the moments that you started, just going on the theme of fire through fog, so when times were getting foggy, what would you do to, I guess, build that fire inside of you to shine brighter to get through a foggy time like that? When you started really getting in those, because I'm sure you had ups and downs, like there was days where you struggled and days that you were just, okay, we're going to get through this. But then the next day is like, just bam, you're smacked right back down.
Yeah. You know what? I let it go. Like I let myself go. I broke down. I would just cry and I just let myself do it. And if I needed help from anybody, I would ask, because I knew that this was a journey that I wasn't going to be able to deal with myself.
A lot of people can't do that, especially men.
Yeah, especially men. And I think that was, part of the problem with,
So how'd the rest of the family take it? Brothers, sisters? I know my mom is your sister, so.
Oh, it was rough. It was very rough for everybody. I mean, just a very long time. It was a very rough first year.
But how you sound is that you were trying as hard as you could, and you seem more of a positive person and wanted to get through it. So would there be moments where they were a little more down than you that it would drag you down, or would you just show them that it was going to be all right?
Actually, I think they didn't show their emotions in front of me because they wanted to protect me. They didn't want me to be upset. They wanted, me to heal, me to recover. So I didn't see a lot of that on my family side besides that first week that he had passed, where everybody was just so emotionally drained and so upset. But after that, I know that they probably had their moments. I'm sure that they did, but they didn't show me that because they were trying to get me through it. Obviously, they were trying to help me through the whole situation. Yeah. So I didn't see their emotions as much, except for when I was, having a breakdown. Then somebody would come over, and I mean, I know I dropped Kelby off at your mom's a few times with you.
Alec?
So Alec, I dropped Alec off.
Oh, okay.
When I would have, when I was breaking down or something, because I didn't want to put that out on Alec. So I would always take him over to, he could play with you.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah,
that's good too, because I feel like that's something he would remember is you breaking down. Because I know my mom has been through a few hard times with 4 kids and basically going crazy that I remember. So that's good that you
and I didn't have him around like, okay, well, I had to clean Jared's room. I had to disassemble everything and get rid of all the baby clothes. And so that day, it was just me and my mom. And I kept saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then we drove to the grocery store, and she went in the store, and I started bawling.
Yeah.
And so, no, I wasn't fine, because that was a very hard moment, too. But I didn't have Alec there that day either.
Is there anything, you may have already answered this, is there anything that you feel, maybe not to this day, but a few years after it, 5 years, 10 years after, that you think you could have done different?
No, I do not, because I realized that it wasn't my fault, and I never ever blamed my babysitter. And I've had people say, well, I probably would have, but it's not an intentional thing. It's
what
baby.
What would you say to them when they say that?
I'm just like, it's not an intentional thing.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't mean to do that. Back in that day, I mean, that was 27 years ago. People laid their babies on their stomachs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they just
it
did.
wasn't even a big thing.
No, it was not a big thing. And so it just something that it just happened. And I seriously think that there was actually something wrong with Jared.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I always go back to that day before I even took him there and said, I think he's breathing funny.
Yeah.
And I literally remember that in my head.
Mm.
And so I just feel like everything happens for a reason. There was a reason this happened, and that boy of mine is waiting for me.
Yeah.
And he's got the doors open for me and my family. Mm-hmm. And
that's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
You having kids, what are your thoughts so far?
It's kind of hard for me to imagine. I mean, I would assume, parents, it's hard for anybody to imagine to go through. I mean, I don't know how I would react.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I can definitely see where, the man of the house would break down and shut himself down because of that. But I mean, that's rough,
right.
Yeah.
Hearing how you dealt with it. Obviously you had Alec to deal with. I mean, to pull you through, you weren't there alone to kind of
deal with everything on my
exactly
on my own,
exactly.
So
that's that's a blessing that you had, and then obviously you had many more come after that. So
yeah,
and like you said,
many more.
Well, maybe not many more, but
I did have many more.
So it's crazy to think about, and it's awesome to hear. I mean, I know it's been you said 27 years.
27 years. Is Alec will be 29 this year. Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, I know Alec, he still feels a connection to Jared. And so when he went to college, he ended up getting a tattoo on his back. And then he calls me and he says, Mom, guess what? I got a tattoo. And I'm like, what? You got a tattoo? You're in college. What are you doing? Yeah. And he said, no, I got this tattoo, and it reads across the back, an angel who walks beside me. And it has a cross, and it says Jared on it. And I was like, okay, make me cry now.
Yeah. That's cool.
So,
yeah, I've seen that. He actually gave me the concept of the tattoo I wanted on my chest. It goes across kind of like his, but I didn't want to copy him and have the same.
Yeah.
But
so that was.
It is a cool tattoo. I've seen it.
Yeah.
So what has been the hardest thing, besides, obviously, without saying, your son was gone? Might be a hard question.
It is a hard question. I mean, I would say it's just getting through it is the hardest thing. Getting to that point to where you can actually be happy and live your life again.
Find yourself again.
Yeah, it takes time, and I just don't want people to feel like, you know, hey, I have to be back to normal the next day or something like that. I mean, you have to take time to grieve.
Oh, for sure.
And there is a grieving process, and people just don't. There is so many stages. There is anger, you know, there is, I'm so mad at God. And you do go through that. I'm sorry. I love God. He's my savior. But I was mad. I was mad at God. Like, why did you take my child? You know, and you get through that stage, and then, you know, you have this anger, and then you have people coming up and saying, no, he's in heaven now. It's okay. And I'm like, no, it's not okay.
Yeah.
You know, you really do
It's
go
easy
through
for
a
them to
lot
say,
of
yeah.
stages. And you even go through this ghost kind of stage, like you think he's still there. You know, it's that was a really strange part for me, because you felt like he was still there. And I literally woke up out of a dead sleep shortly after he had passed, and Tim's mom had passed. Like, I don't know, she passed in 2000, and she passed in 2000. Jared died in 1994, and I literally woke up out of my sleep and saw Helen holding Jared.
Wow.
So it was so real.
Yeah.
Like, and at that point, I'm like, my baby is safe.
Yeah.
My baby is with his grandmother, and I know he's safe.
That's awesome.
So people do have those visions, and they do see things like that. It's like you're relieved. Like, it's just a relief.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's definitely probably easy to grasp onto and accept it, because it just makes you feel better.
It made me feel so much better to know that his grandmother was taking care of him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what would be the most rewarding thing?
Most rewarding thing? The most rewarding thing is being a hell of a mother.
Yeah.
Is coming out of it like I am still.
And you definitely have been. You're a great aunt.
Thank you.
And a great aunt.
Yeah, that brought me to tears. Just that, you know, not that you're like this conceited mom or something.
No,
but
I mean,
it made me appreciate my children so much more, and keep them safe, and just love them.
And you have
so
two grandbabies coming.
And
soon.
I have two grandbabies coming.
Yeah. I can definitely, I mean, that's something I can say about you, Shelly, is that it doesn't matter what's going on that day, what your kid has done. You can tell that Shelly loves her kids more than anything. And even with me, I mean, you were so loving and caring towards me and Brian or any of the other cousins. Like, that was the best. And I appreciate that. Like, and I'm sure your kids do. So
I love my nieces and nephews too.
Yeah.
I did.
Great memories.
Yeah. So. Great memories.
Let's see here. Does anybody else have any questions right now? No.
I just want to
go ahead.
Make sure, you know, there's a reason, just to reiterate, that Safe to Sleep campaign. You know, I just want to say, don't put your baby on his belly. Do not, just to revamp this so people know, don't put your baby on his belly. Do not put animals or heavy blankets, anything in the crib. Do not sleep. Please do not sleep with your infant. Parents have rolled over and suffocated their children because of it. Or they could have the SIDS because they're so cuddled up, and maybe their face.
Someone from last year, they lost a child from SIDS. They co-slept.
Yeah, you cannot sleep with your infant. I don't care how mad that child is or how upset that child is, how many hours you have to stay up because that baby's crying. Do not sleep with your child. And not even to sleep, you know, people post these pictures of the baby sleeping on top of their dad's chest, on its stomach, and I'm sorry, that dad is asleep. What if that father moves, the baby falls off, or the baby goes in between him and you just can't be too careful. You know, you really just can't.
And that's good to hear from someone who's actually experienced that. I mean, you didn't even experience it that way, but knowing that this thing is possible now, you're able to get your story out there, so maybe people can have that second thought and be like, okay, it's cute and all, and it's very loving and everything, and there's other ways
It's
to
a
show
safety
love
thing.
and have the cuteness and stuff, but
And of course,
just-
your babies can sleep on you, but if you're asleep,
yeah,
or if you think you're going to fall asleep, it's just not.
just
Yeah,
kind of take those precautions and the extra thoughts. Is the
Yeah.
biggest thing is what
Yeah.
you're saying. So
Yeah, and I want people to know that from what I've read now, just recently, that it is not hereditary, because once Jared had passed, and then I had Connor, I literally was in a panic. I didn't even. They had me in the hospital, and they wanted to put a heart monitor on Connor, and take it home and put it on him, and while he was sleeping, and that terrified me more than him not having that monitor on, like, because it does false alarms. It'll just go off, and nothing will be wrong with Connor. And I literally broke down, and I said, "Take this machine. I can't do this. I will take care of my child, but I am not going to have this machine on Connor." And from what I've read now, that it is not a hereditary thing. So every child's different. It's just, there was probably just an issue that Jared had.
gotcha.
So,
Well, yeah, I hope we can get this out to as many people as possible. What's been the biggest, I guess, lesson learned about yourself and others? I guess yourself first.
that I'm stronger than I think I am. Like, I am a strong person. Yeah.
Good.
And I like to show that to my kids. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always tried to show that to them. Like, if we can make it through this, we can make it through anything.
Yeah.
Like, literally anything.
Yeah.
I don't care. Yeah.
That's, I mean, you can't really beat that. So,
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
for the weak,
yeah.
for sure.
What have you learned about others? I mean, family members, Alec, husband, anything like that? I mean,
What I've learned husband-wise is you can't read them. You can't help with their emotions. You can be there for them, but you can't heal them.
mm-hmm.
So that's why I suggest the marriage counseling, and I've seen other marriages fall apart because of a death of a child. And it's because you don't know how to cope, together as,
You want to be each other's rock.
You
but
have
if
to-
you're both falling apart at
Apart.
the same time, it's not.
exactly.
Yeah, doesn't work.
Yeah. So I suggest therapy, even if that person's doing well, you need to be on the same page.
Mhm.
You need to know what that other person's thinking so you can help them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, aside from that subject of your situation, yeah, marriage that's your foundation. I always tell Leah, it's like, if we're not good, I don't think anything under us can be good.
Exactly.
Because if the kids see that we're not good, they're going to wonder, they're going to see this. So keeping that foundation strong is key. Not to make this like a whole marriage thing, but it has to be, because experiencing something like that, it can destroy relationships, yourself. I mean, stuff like this can lead to people ending their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure it's happened.
And it leads to people doing alcohol,
drugs,
because they're coping in a different way.
Trying to take the pain away.
They're
It's
trying
temporary.
to take the pain away, and so it ends up, they don't know how to cope with it, so they use something else.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there goes your marriage.
And you say the coping for you was just taking care of the rest of the kids, basically.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you did to cope?
Not really. I mean, I made time for my friends and my family.
Mm-hmm.
I just made sure, for me, I had to be around people.
Yeah.
Because that helped me, get through it. If I'm by myself, that's when I lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's when my brain's thinking, about him and everything that happened. So being around family, friends, and taking care of my kids was, the way I got through it.
When did you eventually go back to work? I'm sure it wasn't right after Connor.
I was really not so smart, and I went back the week after he died.
Oh, really?
And they didn't even expect me back there, but I'm just one of those people, like, I can't, if I'm at home, I'm worse.
Mm-hmm.
But there was that week that I went back, and then I had a breakdown at the bank, and basically I had to go home.
Mm-hmm.
But I just pushed myself, and that's what I'm saying. Don't push yourself. Don't just let yourself heal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this story's been powerful. Go ahead.
Oh,
Do you have
I do
something
want to
else?
say that since they've done this Safe to Sleep campaign, they started this, I think they said it was in like 94 or something like that. that 50%, the rate has gone down 50% on SIDS.
Really?
So there is something to this, you know, the safety precautions that you take with your child.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely decreased like by 50%.
They've came out with a lot of different things too, like the sleep sacks and things like that to prevent.
Yeah.
Prevention's everything.
Yeah.
And just doing it is the key.
And I think maybe in the hospitals, I'm not sure if all hospitals do it, but they do a prevention thing and go over it with you, I believe, before you leave the hospital too.
Yeah. I'm also,
At least I'm hoping they do.
And I think before prevention, awareness is the biggest thing. And I think this is what this is doing right here, is bringing awareness to people. Because in my line of work of construction safety, it's people have that mindset, oh, it's never going to happen to us, or that's not going to happen to me, until it does. I mean, before that happened, do you think it would have happened to you? Did you even know anything about it?
I did only because of Alec.
Okay.
And, you know, sometimes that freaks me out because, okay, did I imagine this was going to happen to a child of mine or something? Why was I so, I was just so adamant with Alec to not put him on his belly? Because a lot of the grandmas and stuff, that's all they knew. Like, they would put their children on their stomachs, you know. But,
and first child, too, I feel like you're just so much more overly precautious.
Yeah. And then so when I didn't tell the babysitter to not put him on his stomach, that's when I blamed myself.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't following my own rule.
Gotcha. So, yeah, the awareness is huge here. And then that leads to the prevention. So they know that it happens now, hearing your story. So now here's your prevention. So let's just prevent this as much as possible. Take that 50% down to 45% to 40%. So that's the biggest thing. And that's, I mean, now that you have 2 grandbabies coming, like, do you think Connor and Alec will have this? They've dealt with this too now, and they know it from you and going through it. Do you think they're going to take those extra precautions? I mean, I know you're going to be.
Oh gosh,
Grandma's going to be like,
precautions,
hey,
because I will be sitting down, and you know, like, I'm sure they don't think about this all the time because they were just too young.
Yeah.
You know, and so my thing now lately is like, I'm going to take them aside and I'm just going to say, hey, these are the precautions you need to take. And if I see my grandchild in any other position, you will be in trouble.
Yeah. I mean,
it definitely has opened my eyes because I didn't know anything. It makes total sense. Like, they're breathing in their own carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
Even with our kids, I've brought your story up. I've said this. I mean, we can't have these things in this crib and stuff. So it's had an effect on me, and now I know the full story now, and I didn't even know it back then. So that's the whole prevention thing. So
prevention. It doesn't matter how much that baby's crying. It seriously does not.
Yeah.
Babies are going to cry, and if they don't like it, then
if they can't turn over on their own.
Yeah, they can't.
That's
turn
the whole thing.
They can't turn over at those ages on their own. So.
Yeah.
But.
You got anything else? This is the show's yours.
I think I pretty much said everything. So when I said like the brainstem, I don't know medically a whole lot about it, but it's, from what I read, it's something about the nerve cells around the brain, which help with your heart and your lungs. So if there's something wrong in the brain cells, they don't know how to turn their head. So that's why I'm saying, it's something within the child. And that's not hereditary. It's not a hereditary thing. So I just don't want people to blame themselves for something like that, because it's probably something that just was going to happen to Jared. And to me, it might be weird to say, but it was a blessing that I was not with him. Because if I would have been with him, I probably would have freaked out myself. And my babysitter did the right thing by doing CPR. I'm not a person that can handle that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you may.
I literally would not have. I just would have lost it.
You may have blamed yourself even more than.
I would have blamed myself even more. So it was a good thing that I was not there, and that's if it was going to happen, that's how it happened.
Yeah.
So.
Well.
Don't blame yourselves. Get help. Get counseling. Have support system, and it's just not your fault.
Well, I appreciate it. Do you have anything, Leah?
I feel like I could ask a million questions.
Yeah.
I would need to sit here a lot longer.
I mean, maybe this will open up for another part 2. So, but Shelly, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your story. It's definitely powerful, and I want to get it out there as much as possible, and I hope you do the same. I'm sure you have as much as you can. So if anybody has anything else, go ahead and say your piece. So, all right. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.